our presenters. But before I really get started, I'm going to introduce myself. She Ethel Branch Yansha, Mipatwani Nashle, Nakai Bashin, Sitnajani Dashache, Ado Nakai Dashanella, East Canyon Diablo Detnasha, and Kinthana Kehashche. It's again an honor to be your Attorney General. She Deneba Washington Begadit Aitso Shinanish. And this is my second term. And in my first term as Attorney General, we did pursue settlement negotiations with the Hopi tribe. And this time is just completely different in terms of the composition of the team and really the energy that everyone seems to be bringing to the table in these settlement negotiations. We were able to wrap up settlement negotiations with Hopi relatively early in this process and have been meeting with the all parties since October and are very close to finalizing terms. So really, really exciting to be at this point where the nation can have security, water security for the future through this settlement, and not only address the LCR basin, but all of the nation's claims in the state of Arizona and actually have access to some of the firmest water in the system, the Colorado River system in Arizona, and that's the upper basin of the Colorado River. So really, really exciting to be having this conversation and looking forward to having our team walk you through their presentation. Just a little bit of housekeeping information. The live stream should be running on a number of pages. It's running on the Water Rights Commission's page, Navajo Nation Water Rights Commission's Facebook page, as well as the speaker's page and the president's page. That should also be running on their YouTube channels as well. And just a reminder that if you're not able to sit through the full presentation on radio or even on social media, those social media live streams remain on the pages as recordings. And it's also being streamed on my page as well, the Navajo Nation Attorney General page. So if you want to see the slide presentations, that's a great way to do that. Just go onto those social media pages and you can view this presentation in addition to listening to it on the radio. And so tonight's forum is going to do a couple of things. It's going to provide context around the nation's water rights in Arizona and the proposed terms of a settlement agreement with the 30 plus parties that are at the negotiating table. It's going to address our claim to the Colorado River upper basin and lower basin and Little Colorado River, as well as the Gila River basin. The first part of the presentation will be delivered in English, and then we'll have our Water Rights Commission Chair, Vice Chair Earl Tooley, and former Attorney General Louis Dennett Sosi provide the information in Denebazad. And I just have to say it's a real joy to work with Vice Chair and former Attorney General Dennett Sosi. They bring a lot of knowledge and compassion and care for the Navajo people to the negotiating table and to the work that they do in providing public education and ensuring that the Navajo people's water rights are protected. So I just want to say thank you to Vice Chair and former Attorney General Dennett Sosi. And then our presenters will also cover key points from the settlement summary. I think they're going to start with the scope of the settlement and really covering the nation's water claims. The LCR claim is part of an active adjudication or litigation case right now. So they're going to cover a little bit of that background information. And then they're going to go into the different projects that can be made possible through the settlement. That's one key distinction between the litigation path and a settlement, is that there is funding that can come with the settlement. Litigation really doesn't come with any funding, and in fact costs the nation quite a significant amount of money. But through a settlement, that brings the potential of billions of dollars to fund needed water infrastructure for the nation. So that's one very exciting thing about the settlement, in addition to opening up really incredible opportunities like access to the upper basin water and the lower basin water from the Colorado River, in addition to some other jurisdictional benefits. Basically, flexibility and freedom to move the nation's water anywhere on the nation. That's something that a settlement offers that litigation simply does not. In terms of the public education, hopefully many of you have been to our in-person meetings. Public education is very important to the nation under President Nygren's leadership and the speaker's leadership, and of course the council as well. They're constantly asking us to do more, to provide information to the public and have greater transparency. And so we're working very hard to do that. And over the last 6 weeks, our team of attorneys and technical experts have traveled to 25 or so communities, providing information and resources about the nation's involvement in litigation and settlement negotiations. A lot of that was just background information, preparing us to have a better conversation, a more informed conversation about the terms of an actual proposed settlement. And the second wave of information has been about what is in the proposed settlement that we're finalizing currently. And there will be an additional phase of public education. We've received some input on how to improve our presentation. So we're going to have a third phase of those presentations here in the coming weeks. These meetings are an opportunity for community members and leaders to ask questions and share comments and concerns. This is also something that members of council and speaker have been very mindful of. They want to hear what your concerns are. They want to hear what your questions are. And what we're doing is we're compiling all of those questions, and we're going to attach your questions and your comments to the legislation. So be sure to come out to our public meetings and provide your questions, your comments, your input. And I will say that a lot of the response has been very positive. Folks are eager to have water in our communities. And then again, the settlement really offers that faster path to bringing water into homes. So I'm very happy that we will have that presented to you very soon. So let's see. In terms of learning about the schedule for public education, we're going to have an ad in the Navajo Times for this next phase of presentations. We will be running ads on KTNN. And then, of course, we have very active social media channels, whether that's the Water Rights Commission, the President's page, the Speaker's page, or my own page for the Navajo Nation Attorney General. We're trying to post all of the schedules on there. Please share those with your friends and encourage them to come. Word of mouth is actually the most reliable method for sharing information and news on the nation. So we appreciate you helping contribute to that. But using these radio broadcasts and the social media live streams is another way that we're reaching out to the public. And so thank you all for listening tonight and being part of this conversation. We know water is very, very important to the Navajo people, to our families living here on the nation, especially in remote areas. We also know the importance of sharing information and resources with you, community members. And so please, if you have recommendations on how we can do better in our public education, we are open to your feedback. And so just a reminder that at the end of this broadcast, we will be taking questions. So if you're listening to KTNN on the air, you can call or text your questions or comments to 928-288-0567. Again, that's 928-288-0567. And if you're joining us via live stream or social media, please use the comment section there. The comments that you enter into social media actually come to us on the platform that we're using. So we'll do our best to answer as many of those as we can. And so I'm going to go ahead and hand things back over to Vice Chair to translate and move us on to the next component of our presentation. Yehet.
Akosila here, Shamayazu Kodon Kichuin, the ya, and Kimayaja at Celestade, Agadit Ahits, Gehinan, the Spirit Esada. I don't that the Ekodon Ketisha, Elats at the Lago, Yakudiki Nanish, Archikoki Ananish, and Dazi Kudiki after winter, Conde was the door, a court nada at the to Ajabich, another way, Jishin Veko. Dishin, Linike, Yahan, so she a children, Mazakito, Kudiki, Saho. Ja, en da has koben kitrahana da hot eton ki ketlate shinna dasho. Ako eben na chigo ge ya kon kilcho hot anigi tlangenat ani nabeho benat ani laje da satagi President Night Green eshe kwadon kicha hanana zihin lidole.
Yat shikedo shodene hodo hataso kizgi hodoy tenebananta Dr. Boo Nigrin die hoje hol jijo hoje Nahui Ahigi Belchaz Anigi Navajo Department of Justice Gatit Ahi So Shanad Neshigi Madam Ethel Branch Hot Oya Didi the Kui Goshin Gatit Ahi Dan Lenigido Peshwa has Ando Shishet has Anigi Yego Banda Dit in Lahalet Ola Hajo Hat Est on Bigatolit Hat Nenigi Jo Tobana Hat Enigi a Colorado River Little Colorado River Do Coconino Ado Navajo aquifers dishi le de kui goshin alzadas trogo hane la de nebekeya hos to ha zoje bedet ito le to de ne lenegi chiyos ido le noye betho aigi ado hodina goshin hodo beshwa has an large yayel tigi speaker curly shin kitcha hat zito le ado hoje gadit ahit so Madam Ethel Branch hodo nigel chodo alton le commission nhadan lenigi bikita hodini dot chenesti nahalo nhadel nishigi di so horoshi yada dolt to Navajo Department of Justice Water Rights Attorney gadit ahitan lenigi dia si yego hodonal sos hadalga Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Agreement noye hadalya sta dat Ashlatina Hedoba Diba Nahat Si Khadot Alto Hate Ola the Nebeke Bakao Tro Bedet Etolit Noye Hil de Don Jono Trobedadet Egi Kate and it Lon Khan de Lodobiga Tasit Leo Ebony Nache Kat Eto Let no Kaja Hoje Hol Jido Ado Da Esnot Angish Nache Dia hodo the nea hui chingi del neshigishin hodo in Ketkhane edo li John le start that nes nana hedoba ayeta a hot o settlement la bohotest and US Senator John Kyle a hot end you peso bedet given in nache to be got that there's need lake in nahal krede ebeni nado nas hide yada Adona Kinana Hega 2012 be la hot osa ba yana das a hot end as Hanat Ato Hanahadat and Dobiga Hadot need Ebina look anda that's it Nesnana Hedoba Hasli Kad Benada Hasidit Ado Nalsos Hajos Hadest the Nebe Washington Beshma has Anya and that Jagi Betate and Dol Sos Hodot Nido Ekat approved the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Ado Bekedo Shi in le Ado Benyenda Idol Kidishi Hata So Kizishi Le Beshma has an Do Habatate Nil Sosta Ndaide Desh Killa no Sonji Navajo Nation Council Bichin Dato Leto Bandad Nishido the Le Patients in case be it the Do Transaldi Shitil Ado a Hehe Sloshitla a hot ocean Hayut the Nehoda Netlo the Ashon Jono Ben Dados Nishibinina a Hodon Nishigi Trobet da Nitle Trodebe in no Beni Nache John Lake at Old Trata Dol Nito Zeil Endo Naniste Yosge Donle as Chiniaji da Ostragi et da Dol Nit non le Yedescada hot in Trodebe na Anish Tro in le nasty des condo and the bigata shido lit for the kid on it on kanda stahalada hot oben in that jono hat de sta na kidenezet na khed edan legido the net and linigi ad jono trobe da hollido lit when zon beninach betad nil khal hoje bede nil nish the quishin des hot o khal that ahigi yin dashnish ani be khasti غديت أهيت صوتا أروشي خجلو شلهز أنجي نال صوشي نل أنجي Chief Legal Counsel بيتا بكر دا هدات أنجي دون لي كوشي consultants دا أروش كدا Attorney General دنه لويس دنت سوس هدات أنجي دا ييغو ينداشنش أرو دي خدينا غنجنون كلا دون نهيجي سي خيت أولا خود خجنا هول جي دونالد صوص خدل ياغ خيت دنه يسه بكا دو وخ ننگي ايشي ياندا دوت ان لو بكيدو شيندا ان لينالد صوص بهز اني خدل دول نيلتون لم بيش مهز ان بخيا دول كش آدو بكيدو شين شلا دول خاص نايدش كيلتو يا شليات تو دو شليات تا كامت ننگي ايشي هو دا دول أروشي بكيدو بيشراس أني لندا دا أسليدو ششانادو كيشادو بلا ناس سلين تغونادو كيشنلي كنالك يأتي هوان هوان بهز أني دا يوزهاجي إيشين يلندا أسلين بكيدو شين شتاتين خاهد صوبكا نات أني لنجي إيشين يلا أسلين آد انتن جغنو نكا خا أو ودو ليخوين زوشين جو خدو أسلوبانسا كيسوين لي هوان دو هوان دان لنگي Senator Kelly دو Senator Sinema Congressman Crane دات انگي سي بلتايل خودن خيل كيجيب بكي يدا ديل تكتو نخايا ديل تكتو ليلتانو يدن يتلو ابننا خورو تنبكي بكان كيلس انگي تسكيل ناسكو دينيت اهوت اشي به خدينا غوشين ييغو بين كلنا هدون اهوت ان اخيهن كديني دول ارو حتى اسو كيزغيدو كوشين كيتول كيل بين كلنا هنا هورو يتنبنن تا دكتور بو نايغرين هورو هنن هيج ايشلا دو شي هورو بايد نيتيغي بكيسز جو قديا بيغان سوبانسس كيسن ليخنا هوت نات آني سنس خدو نات آني دو دني دس سنجيدا ستا خد انجيدا يا اي يادا دي باي ديل تيجي دو بيغا تدرول ديل ابننا قندا لكن نهل قد نات آني جنو دن كدس سندا بيغا بسلان لندا انو بواشنطن بنانت آن لنجي بسلا نزنجي بندشيل نشاشي هنا هوت اهشي آن نهي اديل يادا نيت زنوت آن دا نيت ايدو لهارو ناست نسده كيسين كألشن تخبه ده هلو تنيد زو نادي كدل إبه أخيهن كديني دو هقونه
Ja, det är då KTNN president Nigrin kodon till Heinzi då adon det är kodiki att trahejan att det adon det är när det sedan lini då kodiki yanke vilket kan natcha har även natcha ligo be hod då leko kodoshi ja det är bara när det är alltid bästa hasa ana jag hjälpte nigi det det
Yat det där är snart gido again så kiziki yat ni det snil då jag Shay Crystal and Curly this yeah do senjikin initially to headlini bashishin kia ani da shiche do diltqat di kia ani da shinale but amato san initially do nile lo hale hol yehde yise that nasha talana do tsalgoi na hos ate do ishla go tratna zlebik itinchi iki talana do tsalgoi des bestod Asian deshkis jetes nazlene do tak ehlane do din ishla besh batasana be wajihiki bayeshti Speaker of the 25th Navajo Nation Council do kodo hehe ilse the Attorney General kuje ratit ahitso Ethel Branch kodo hehe nideshni do kwaigi attorneys dan linigi do je besh batasana ilto etra in dash nishikito Water Rights Commission aje ilto nahaz thanigi hehe dabideshni tize yego ko water rights Dabiti ninigi yego yin dashnish do konde shina Mr. Earl Tooley, the Cushing Hunza, the neck at ya had nettle. Quite a bananish if or a but a hit and it's in the store. Although quite behind the eggy water rights had ninigi the two as had that a higgy a behind net or less the chibi. Though the it's a higgy sheet a ni bahiki a ni hit in a the cuisine che con finant ani yendal nishadon hu at dit ahi the cuisine nache yendal nisho do di inda di bi yo khahiki bi ye e inda kodo hash no hanne kwa egi belat that dit le e that dit ni do kon o hayu ni ke mana hasam yet na rock at the drought that the mini do climate change the urban laganic acid that the niniki abe ka che a ko hoshni lende the net and liniki hajo shin history of cotton the large and sea case do le ado the abi khahigi aje ado on sea case it don't need a ko the water rights they liniki aya hotel do din le nashiko na halchine do ke so ke e ba date ko di e den ken ha swidon hizani ko atan hilni le don ha hat khali dan liniki is ye go kon to pata noche jo di e del indo e hot abe ina en to ni do to e begin holodo but so this in holo ko eben na che e hot a fancy queso con el that the le state officials do leje ke da hat inigi border towns that ehigi do kis ani that ehigi Hopi tribe e kwaiki but that ni bi do bayata di keto el hat di ati John le de Washington that dan hinal o e con o hayu the net do net and liniki at si kon to hit that there's the on him hit hohiki groundwater and surface water de liniki e kwa egi badani chito but on seeds and she but e eta ilia ako e he with the deshni kwa egi ni kha it hi the net lot and long e kwa egi each hi ta ki obana shi de yila do dito in e quite best of best on the kissing in a go ben on the the funding for water infrastructure the unity joke quote or a unit the net I think the 20 he to ikisha a quite projects the unity Ishi bin not that is not to ben not the dish kiss no synegishi a ben come has and there's going to be many questions that many of the listeners might have in regards to water projects. And within the presentation, there are many maps that show the regions of proposed water line projects, big projects that will deliver water throughout the Navajo Nation. So, shikwe ke hastiniki, shishan she le, we kwagi ke hastiniki she hashita e trodde na the dol na don siniki to e kwaiki e kwajin kitcha hapos ne 928-288-0567 and this is the time for many of our communities to get your answers questions even if you're in different locations throughout the Navajo Nation. If you want to learn about the Pacific benefits or proposed projects within your regions, feel free to call into KTNN tonight, and many of the technical teams are here to answer many of those questions this evening. Though the beshpada san nahasit khanaje to the that aniki a behes anibe had the nito e ajet bandit nito and this proposed water rights settlement will be introduced as a legislation to the whole 25th Navajo Nation Council. La'ado leto nasho isho President Nigrin banado lesto ade so leje kainai do lito leje Washington DC the Congress the liniki ade so banaho de yoti. So this is a very huge effort that we're doing as a team with our Navajo attorneys, with our technical teams that have been working for over a year on this issue. It has been gaining momentous movement throughout the whole 3 months. So we're almost at the finish line. So we want everyone to have the opportunity to listen to the benefits and listen to the whole terms. Ni di besh patas anetani kliniki o hayun atikit honodot ashoda ko hitene di ni public educations do radio beat do need. So this is a continuation of public education. So feel free to go to many of the scheduled locations throughout the Navajo Nation. So we do have in-person versions, Zoom versions, and also radio. So it's important to have input from the whole Navajo Nation. Even if you're a little child, a teenager in school, this is an opportunity for our children to learn as well, because this is what our grandfathers and grandmothers have been fighting for many generations, decades. So we're almost at the finish line. And I just want to say thank you again for listening to the program this evening. Do kwaiki to hehenan hiteshni to leto da alt isiko hasti to leto ashode da hosiato kwaiki niketko na hota huiliado leto then nache sa hoto ni leto hot an sikesako hot hasti to leto nana hehe. And this is Crystalline Curley, speaker of the 25th Navajo Nation Council.
La kodo ya ginat ani kodo ngicha hatsi peshpa hasa anana tin isla okone o dagido ngitya o de lenigi diki ya banana shide yosen le hadi enda tale ya ikon han so shi ya heishto na khato ni ado na khato netle da an ki it go do an ki ne biki to an ki eta it go ya ikon diki togi etlia hada de losen le ado and the skato chiha niliki to hut ego eban sa hakke so ko di de kilcho ha kweke o jishigin kilchita hodit atin liniki jon lene zapti na go de slad ado and the le sebetin do strana khaje je kilto no trage kodokin kilishta da de ni ko dike yapen yelche dofne ado and the beshbe hosne o not so not ike ya hot in the north trashado under the best chi up in the case hat niki to akwa ike nahito so de ke to the dutch kitado kodinda hitla eben nachiko kodon hiche not hot dots kodo ya dan lini the white adon the Jason John chi to kodon kicho to
Good evening. She Dwight Witherspoon Yanisha. Dolly Denad touching initially. Base but Ahni Bashim but Ahni Dashache and Scottish Dasar Nala. Settled doing do Kitlana a Dana Shah. For those of you that are now tuning in, we are talking about the Navajo Nation water rights and the Navajo Nation's proposed comprehensive water rights settlement for the Colorado River's upper basin, lower basin, and the Little Colorado River basin. If you have questions or comments, you can send them by calling or texting 928-288-0567, or you can use the chat function on Facebook. Slide. This evening, we are going to discuss certainly the importance of water and how water is certainly sacred. We have the phrase "to e ina at," water is life, and how it relates certainly to our Dinek creation stories, and certainly about our sacred mountains, the 4 sacred rivers that provide a powerful life force for the Navajo Nation and Navajo people. Certainly, many of our clans are directly related to water that create certainly our identity. Many of the ceremonies, we have the opportunity to use water as a part of the ceremony. Certainly in our prayers, we certainly need water to survive and to provide for our animals, for growth of our crops. And today, it was wonderful to be able to have some snow across the Navajo Nation and in much of the Southwest. So we were greatly blessed today. This evening, we're going to talk about the Colorado River, and certainly there's an upper basin and a lower basin. And we're going to talk a little bit about the background behind laws that were created related to a division between the upper basin and the lower basin and in the 7 western states. This will provide us some background to be able to discuss how do we obtain water rights on the Navajo Nation. And there are 2 methods. One of those methods is you can go to court, and in court you're seeking your claims to water, and usually it's considered a legal term, general stream adjudication. The other method is settlement, and we will be discussing how the Navajo Nation is engaged in both settlement for water rights in the state of Arizona and how the Navajo Nation is engaged in litigation or the general stream adjudication for the Little Colorado River Basin. Slide. So I'm going to describe a picture that has the 4 states, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. And there's a kind of pictured description that's a little bit brown that goes up into Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and a portion of Arizona on the Navajo Nation reservation. And this is in the northeast corner. And this dividing line you can think of as like Lee's Ferry. It follows along the Black Mesa Ridge towards Chinle, and it goes down towards Steamboat and over to the New Mexico border. And so the lands to the north and to the east from Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah are considered the upper basin. And there are 5 states certainly considered in the upper basin: Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. The division between the upper basin and the lower basin also provides for the states of Arizona, Nevada, and California. Within the lower basin of the Colorado River Basin is something called the Little Colorado River Basin. And in the map that I'm describing, it's a little bit in a tealish green, and it includes 44 chapters on the Navajo Nation. And certainly those chapters to the west, like Coppermine, and it's part of Coppermine, and those certainly to the south. You have Shanto, the Black Mesa region. You have Steamboat, Ganado, and all those that are south of that are included in this Little Colorado River Basin. So the waters from those regions generally flow to the south and reach the Little Colorado River. The Little Colorado River Basin certainly starts up in Apache County, up in the Apache Mountains, and actually begins in the state of New Mexico. But those waters flow to the north from that south in the mountains, and they flow up towards, Show Low, Winslow, Holbrooks, St. John's. And once it gets to Winslow, then it's in the main stem and finally reaches the Navajo Nation. And so that basin is called the Little Colorado River Basin. And that's within the lower basin. And we're going to be talking about all three as water sources for the Navajo Nation for settlement, and how we're engaged in litigation in the Little Colorado River Basin. Again, there is three sources: the upper basin of the Colorado River, the lower basin of the Colorado River, and the Little Colorado River. Next slide. In 1922, the Colorado River Compact divided between the upper states in the upper basin and a division between the lower basin states. And in the upper basin, the states were apportioned 7.5 million acre feet from the Colorado River system. The lower basin was also apportioned 7.5 million acre feet of water. The country of Mexico, as the Colorado River flows all the way down into Mexico, they were apportioned 1.5 million acre feet as well. This is important to understand how Navajo may be able to obtain waters rights related to the Colorado River. Next slide. In the upper basin, there are those 5 states of Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. And on the Navajo reservation, the majority of that upper basin that's in Arizona is on the Navajo reservation. Certainly there's a small portion that's near Page, but the majority of the upper basin portion in Arizona is actually on the Navajo Nation. In the lower basin, certainly those states are Arizona, Nevada, and California. In this division of water, the Navajo Nation would be receiving a portion of their water rights from the upper basin, and then a portion of their water rights from the lower basin. The nation also has the opportunity to obtain water rights to the Little Colorado River Basin. The Colorado River itself is managed by the Bureau of Reclamation, and so those are considered federal waters. The Little Colorado River is considered state waters as it reaches all the way to the confluence. Once it goes into the main stem of the Colorado River, it becomes a part of the main Colorado River. These are certainly important sources for the nation to seek water rights to. Next slide. In the upper basin, those states divided their 7.5 million acre feet by percentages. New Mexico gets 11.25% of that 7.5 million acre feet in the upper basin. Wyoming receives 14%. Colorado receives 51.75%. Utah receives 23%. Arizona it's included in that upper basin has a set amount of 50,000 acre feet. And so the Navajo Nation would be receiving a portion of that 50,000 acre feet for their water within Arizona in that upper basin. The lower basin states also have been apportioned 7.5 million acre feet. The states in the lower basin divided their water by set amounts. Arizona in the lower basin receives 2.8 million acre feet a year. Nevada receives 300,000 acre feet. And California receives 4.4 million acre feet. The Navajo Nation would be receiving within Arizona's 2.8 million acre feet a portion of that water. And so those are the sources, certainly on the Colorado River, where the Navajo Nation would be receiving water for our water rights claims. Next slide. Described on the screen, for those of you that are just listening by radio, is a picture of a football field. And the football field is 1 foot deep of water all the way around that football field. And so an acre foot is 325,851 gallons of water. You can think of another way of thinking how much an acre foot is. For an acre of a home site lease, if that home site lease that's 1 acre is 1 foot of water all the way around that acre, that would be considered like an acre foot. Another way to describe an acre foot would be in the back of large pickup trucks. You may have those 325 gallon tanks of water that people use for hauling. It would take 1,000 trips of that 325 gallon tank to be able to be equal to about an acre foot of water. And so those are the 3 ways we kind of want to describe what an acre foot of water would be. Next slide. So in description of talking and discussing water, we use that term acre foot. And that's why we're kind of explaining how much water that is. In that 1922 compact, some of the major provisions that affected Indian tribes is the apportionment that goes to the states. The tribes receive their water rights from the particular states. So in New Mexico, the Navajo Nation would receive water rights certainly from their portion in the state of New Mexico. In Utah, the Navajo Nation would receive a portion of their water rights from the state of Utah. In Arizona, Navajos in both the upper basin and in the lower basin, and also within the Little Colorado River Basin, we would receive our water rights from those apportionments of water that are to the state of Arizona. The compact also cannot be construed to affect the obligations that the United States has to Indian tribes. So again, the water rights for federal lands, which include Indian reservations, must come out of the allocation for each state under the compact. And so Navajo will be receiving their water rights to the upper basin and the lower basin from those apportioned waters that were given to the states. Next slide. This slide is also kind of a picture of the 4 corners, 4 states of Utah, Colorado, and Arizona. And it's describing, again, the upper basin of the Colorado River and the chapters in the upper basin. And then it has a picture of the Navajo Nation and the Hopi tribe within that description of the Little Colorado River Basin. The Navajo Nation has initiated a settlement agreement also in New Mexico. And on the picture that's described, it has the Rio Grande Basin. And so it has the Rio Grande Basin pictured, the upper basin of the Colorado River, and the lower basin of the Colorado River. So Navajo is seeking to obtain water rights, certainly from these basins of water. Next slide. We are engaged in trying to obtain water rights by both methods, and both methods are different, and they're kind of like vehicles. And so in those vehicles, you're traveling in separate vehicles, but you're trying to get to the same destination. And that destination is trying to obtain water rights or title to water sources. And the title that we're trying to obtain is water rights on the upper Colorado River Basin, title to water rights in the lower basin, and title to water rights in the Little Colorado River Basin. There is something called the McCarran Amendment that outlines that tribal water rights are decreed within state courts. And so the Navajo Nation has to go to the state court to obtain its water rights, particularly in the respective states. And for Arizona water rights, it's in the state court of Arizona. In litigation, the Navajo Nation asserted its claims to the Little Colorado River in 1985. And this is for just the Little Colorado River Basin. It wasn't asserting rights to the upper basin or to the lower basin, but just the Little Colorado River Basin. And that started in 1985. The nation had its first hearings on that litigation for general stream adjudication last summer. We're engaged in certainly litigation, trying to obtain water rights through the court on the Little Colorado River. At the same time, the Navajo Nation is engaged in settlements, negotiations with the state and the state parties. What's different in settlement is we're including all of the potential water rights for the Navajo Nation in settlement. So it's very comprehensive. It includes certainly the water for the upper basin. It includes the water for the lower basin. It includes water for the Little Colorado River. In our litigation claim, it was only for the Little Colorado River. So the vehicles are a little bit different. You can think of the adjudication, general stream adjudication in the Little Colorado River is kind of like a wagon. And on the back of the wagon, it has some of those 55-gallon waters. And this is from the Little Colorado River Basin. And it's slow moving because we started our claims in 1985. We had our first phase court hearing last summer, and our second phase for the Little Colorado River in court will be 3 years from now in 2027. So kind of think of a description of that. It's going on right now, but it's a slow moving kind of wagon. Think of settlement more like a semi that has much more barrels of water on it, because it includes the upper basin waters, it includes the lower basin waters, and it includes the Little Colorado River waters. So they're both vehicles. The nation is engaged in both methods. At the same time, we're trying to seek title to water rights through both methods. Next slide. We're going to talk just briefly about the general stream adjudication and provide kind of an update of where is the Navajo Nation at currently in its litigation or being in court to try to obtain water rights to the Little Colorado River. Next slide. In 1985, the Navajo Nation filed its statement of claim on the Little Colorado River. Because of that McCarran Amendment, it identified that tribes need to go first. And so the Hopi tribe actually began their claim on the Little Colorado River between 2019 and 2021. And they have actually received a recommendation for a decree on their water rights in the Little Colorado River. The Navajo Nation started its claim or hearing last summer on phase 1. There's 2 phases, and so there's different categories of water that the Navajo Nation is making claims to. And so we're going to discuss a little bit about what are those categories and what were we claiming in that first phase. Next slide. It's helpful to discuss what happened in the Hopi's claims. And so the Hopi tribe has completed their claims to the Little Colorado River. And there was a special master that made recommendations for Hopi to the state court judge. Hopi made claims that dealt with their future population, and it dealt with their water claims. And so the slide that I'm describing speaks to their future population. And because water rights include certainly past, present, but also the future water rights for a tribe to meet a permanent homeland, Hopi was trying to project how much would their population be, in 2110. The Hopi had their own expert, and their demographer said that the Hopi population would be 52,016 members in the year 2110. In litigation, it's in this Western court system. And so you have to start your water rights claims from zero, and you have to prove up by testimony, by documents, by evidence, and show, certainly what was your past use, what is your present use, and what's your future use for water. The other parties in the litigation on the stream adjudication certainly can challenge the other party's claims. There were about 5 different experts that were asserting how much the population would be in the future. The special master that is hearing all of this testimony for the Hopi claim, they agreed with the Flagstaff expert, and they set that future population amount at only 18,555 Hopi members in the year 2110. So there's a big difference between 52,016 members in Hopi's claim and what the special master recommended was only 18,555. Why is that important? If you have a larger population, certainly you're going to need more water for the future. If you have a lower population, you're going to need less water. And so the Hopi had a water claim for 90,000 acre feet. However, the special master only recognized 29,000 acre feet for the Hopi tribe, which is even a little bit less than a third of their claim. Why is this important? because the Navajo Nation is engaged in its claims on the Little Colorado River, and we're engaged in phase one. And we certainly have concerns about, are we going to get a similar result in relation to, our future population? Next slide. The Navajo Nation, for its phase one only claim, we had to describe what our future population would be. And the Navajo Nation used the 2010 census, and then it used a 1.3% projection for population growth. And in the year 2110, the Navajo asserted that our population would be 340,000. And this is for just the 44 chapters in the Little Colorado River Basin in Arizona. We don't know what the special master recommendation will be until the end of phase two, and that hearing won't start until 2027 in September. The Navajo Nation's water claims were for 85,000 acre feet, and this is for the Little Colorado River Basin, and it's just for a particular categories of water. Again, in phase two, there are a number of other categories that the nation will be making claims to as well. Next slide. In this slide, the description is a phase one and phase two. And so the claims for phase one dealt with what we call DCMI, domestic water use. So that's use of water within homes. Commercial water use, that's for certainly businesses like bashes or C-stores. Municipal is like your water use for schools, for chapters, for hospitals. Those things certainly needs within the community. It also included light industrial use. And so DCMI is domestic, commercial, municipal, and light industrial use was our claim in the phase one. It also included stock and wildlife watering. Some of those features include wells and springs and impoundments. At the end of this week, let me describe, those hearings occurred last summer. They began in April and went through August. There were briefs that were provided afterwards, and the final brief will actually be provided by the United States and the Navajo Nation this coming Friday on the 15th of March. The closing arguments for our phase one claims will be next month in April on the 16th and 17th in the Maricopa Superior Court. Those closing arguments would be available for people to hear and watch. So if you go to the Maricopa Superior Court website, you will be able to watch the closing arguments again on April 16th and 17th. For phase two, the Navajo Nation will be making separate claims for different categories of water. The phase two claims include cultural water use, unique tribal, recreational, fish, wildlife and conservation, mining, heavy industrial, commercial, and irrigation uses. The trial for phase two will actually begin in September of 2027. And so that's 3 years from now. These are the claims that include the Little Colorado River stream adjudication. Next slide. In this portion of the presentation, I'm just going to do a little plug again. For those of you tuning in, we're talking about the Navajo Nation water rights and the Navajo Nation's proposed comprehensive water rights settlement. for the Colorado River Upper Basin, Lower Basin, and the Little Colorado River Basin. If you have questions or comments, you can send them by calling or texting 928-288-0567, or you can use the chat function on Facebook. The portion of the presentation that I'll be discussing is about the Navajo Nation's settlement. And so that's the different vehicle. I just kind of described how the nation is trying to obtain water rights through court, but it's only for the Little Colorado River Basin. And that claim started in 1985. We had our first hearing on phase 1 last summer. Phase 2 claims won't be until 2027. In settlement, the Navajo Nation is engaged in settlement talks with the parties right now. What's very different in settlement is it's comprehensive because it includes all of the claims that the Navajo Nation has for water rights in Arizona. In 2010, many people are maybe familiar with the proposed water settlement in 2010. In 2010, it included the water rights for the lower basin, and it included water rights for the Little Colorado River Basin. It also included a project, the Western Navajo Pipeline Project, that would bring water out from Lake Powell near Lachee and bring that piped water all the way down to Tuba City and to Cameron. So that was kind of the proposed settlement that was in 2010. The proposed settlement in 2012 only included water for the Little Colorado River Basin. And then it reserved an amount of lower basin water for a future settlement if it's reached that could settle the lower basin. It didn't include a Western Navajo Pipeline Project in 2012. Another thing to consider is in 2010 and 12, there was no proposal for upper basin water. And that was because in 1969, the Bureau of Reclamation approached the Navajo Nation Council and was able to obtain a resolution that supported the Navajo Nation not asserting a claim to the upper basin for 50 years. Well, that ended in 2019. And so the Navajo Nation is now able to make claims to the upper basin. So in 2010 and 2012, the upper basin wasn't really available to assert a claim for that portion of the upper basin. However, we are able to make certainly claims to that upper basin in our settlement talks at this time. So it's very comprehensive because it includes all three sources. Again, that's kind of like, a semi truck that has much more water. It includes waters from all three major sources. Next slide. This slide describes who are the parties to the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Agreement. There is the Navajo Nation, certainly that's a water user. There's the Hopi tribe, the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe, the Department of Interior. The Department of Interior has Bureau of Land Management lands. They have national parks. They have U.S. forest lands. And so they're a water user. The state of Arizona, the Arizona Department of Water Resources, the Arizona State Land Department, Salt River Project, even the city of Flagstaff. And then the LCR Coalition is a makeup of many of the neighbors that we have to the south. The cities like Winslow, Show Low, Holbrook, Snowflake, and ranches and irrigation districts that are upstream of us. And that whole group is makeup of the Little Colorado River Coalition. Next slide. This slide is describing that in our Navajo Nation settlement talks, our claims are very comprehensive because it includes the waters from the upper basin of the Colorado River. It includes the Little Colorado River main stem and tributary waters. It includes fourth priority lower basin Colorado River water, which is main stem water. It includes some Cibola lower basin Colorado River water. It includes the groundwater of aquifers and certainly springs. It includes effluent, and it even includes waters related to the Big Boquillas Ranch in the Gila River Basin. Next slide. Next slide. The claims to the upper basin. At the beginning of the presentation, we talked about how Arizona was apportioned 50,000 acre feet for the state of Arizona from the upper basin. You would think that the Navajo Nation, because most of the nation is in that upper basin on the reservation. So the Navajo Nation will be getting 44,700 acre feet of that upper basin allocation. That's 89.4% of that 50,000 allocation for the state of Arizona in the upper basin. 3,000 is apportioned to Page, and then the Hopis will be getting 2,300. And so the Navajo Nation is getting the bulk of the upper basin water. Again, that's 44,700 acre feet. This water, even though it's, at the tail end of the upper basin, because it's in a set amount of 50,000 and Navajo's getting 44,700 acre feet a year of that, this is very valuable, reliable, and protected water, almost like the most important or valuable water on the whole Colorado River. And so the Navajo Nation is getting that amount, and it's really valuable and certainly a benefit for the Navajo Nation. Next slide. On the lower basin, the Navajo Nation will be getting 3,600 acre feet. And this includes 100 acre feet of Cibola lower basin water. This is considered fourth priority main stem lower basin Colorado River water. If you can remember, in 2010 and 2012, there was proposed CAP NIA water. NIA is non-Indian agricultural water. The Department of the Interior and the state of Arizona has taken or zeroed out any CAP NIA water to be included as a part of Indian water settlement. Now, it's helpful to explain a little bit about their provided rationale of why they've taken that off the table. In the division between the upper and the lower basin states, certainly 7.5 million acre feet in the upper basin, 7.5 in the lower basin, 1.5 for Mexico is 16.5 million acre feet of water. That compact divided those numbers in 1922. Now there is not, that much water every year in the Colorado River system. The average might be closer to 13.5 million acre feet, and certainly it depends on what particular year and how much snow and moisture we receive throughout the year. So the states have this drought contingency plan, and it was established in 2007 and covers up to 2026. And when Lake Mead gets to a certain level, Arizona has to cut back on its apportionment of water, as well as Nevada. Well, several years ago, Arizona had to cut back 512,000 acre feet. And in a different year, Arizona had to cut back about 592,000 acre feet of water. Nevada had to cut back as well. And so the interior and the state of Arizona certainly just feel like it's not reliable because, part of that KTNN water is one of the waters that's on the first priorities to be cut. And so they felt like it wouldn't be reliable to provide water to the Navajo Nation for projects. And so the Navajo Nation is certainly trying to obtain more lower basin water. We were not happy that the KTNN water was taken off the table, but we do know that this fourth priority, lower basin main stem water, is of higher priority than CAP water. And so the Navajo Nation will be getting 3,600 acre feet of that water, which includes 100 acre feet of Cibola water. A lot to say there. Next slide. The Navajo Nation for the Little Colorado River will be receiving all the Colorado River main stem water that reaches the Navajo Reservation. This historic flow amount is estimated to be 122,000 acre feet. This includes amounts from priority dates with historic Navajo irrigation projects. Certainly some of the communities on the Navajo Reservation along the Colorado River have traditionally done some irrigation and farming. There's about 40,000 acre feet of historical farming irrigation that has occurred along the communities on the Navajo Reservation next to the Little Colorado River. So that 40,000 is included in that 122,000 acre feet. The Navajo Nation will also get all of the tributary water that reaches the Navajo Nation's reservation. There's a shared wash management. Certainly the waters, the Zithlagene region, there are 5 washes that flow from the north, cross Hopi, and flow down into the Little Colorado River. The shared wash management recognizes historical irrigation uses and diversions. It allows for diversions up to 15 acre feet for stock use or other impoundments along the wash. Anything greater than 15, the other party or other tribe has to approve. But once it gets past Hopi, then we can use all of the water that's in the washes on Navajo once it's past Hopi. So that's kind of a shared management agreement. Again, we get all of the water that reaches the Navajo Reservation, including all the water of the tributary waters that reach the reservation as well. Next slide. For groundwater, the Navajo Nation will be able to obtain water from the Navajo aquifer. And this picture is a description of the Navajo aquifer. And there's a confined portion of the aquifer that's in a teal kind of green. And then there's a larger brown portion that is describing the unconfined portion. The confined portion follows kind of the reservation of the Hopi a little bit, certainly before you get to Tuba City. And it goes up towards a little bit before Shanto, Kienta, out to Rough Rock, a little bit to the east of Keams Canyon. Those are kind of the portions of the confined aquifer. So if you drill into the confined Navajo aquifer, it's under pressure. The water in that well will rise. And so the Navajo Nation and the Hopi have agreed to try to protect the Navajo aquifer. And so they've agreed to pumping limitations. And Navajo has agreed to limit its pumping to 400 acre feet on the confined aquifer. This includes a limit on industrial purposes to only be 2,000, which is included in the 8,400. Hopi has a pumping limit on the confined aquifer up to 5,600 acre feet. They also have industrial limit of 2,000, which is included in the 5,600. In the unconfined portion, that certainly just to all the way to the east of Tuba City, up to the north near Page, not quite as far as Tisnaspas, but a little bit to the west, almost to Mini Farms, down towards Cottonwood. It goes south towards Loop, but not all the way to Loop. And so this unconfined portion, there is no pumping limit on the Navajo aquifer. One of the benefits to settlement is we can make agreements with the other parties directly. And so we've made this agreement with Hopi to protect the confined aquifer with these pumping limits. In litigation, the special master would make their own kind of decree of how much the nation would be able to pump and how much Hopi would be able to pump from the Navajo aquifer. We don't know if the special master would recognize our agreement. And so in settlement, sometimes it allows for better management of resources, like we've made this shared wash management agreement and an agreement to protect the confined aquifer with pumping limitations and certainly limitations on industrial use as well. Next slide. This next slide is a description of the Coconino aquifer. The Coconino aquifer is certainly a little deeper than the Navajo aquifer, and there's a large amount of water in the Coconino aquifer. And on the description, it goes into the state of Utah, into the state of Colorado, into New Mexico. And so it covers about maybe a quarter of the state of Utah in the Four Corners region. It covers maybe about a fifth of Colorado in the Four Corners region, about a fifth of New Mexico, and then almost a quarter of Arizona in the northeast corner. And that covers almost the whole Navajo reservation in Arizona. There is no pumping limit to the Coconino aquifer that underlies the Navajo reservation. And certainly in litigation, the special master would typically make a limit on how much the Navajo could pump from the Coconino aquifer. So in settlement, one of the benefits is we have no pumping limitation. However, the Coconino aquifer in many regions has either a high concentration of salinity or kind of salt, that it's not real potable. In some regions, there's arsenic or radionuclides. It can be very brackish. Some of the good sources is near Ganado. The Coconino aquifer is used. And then down by Twin Arrows, we have 3 wells that have been drilled in a region that good quality sea aquifer water is able to be obtained. And to protect those 3 wells for a future Loop Delicon area project, we've established some protection zones and pumping limitations with 4 parties. We've established agreements with the Hopi tribe, the Arizona State Land Department, the City of Flagstaff, and Bartee Par Ranch to protect our 3 wells, certainly near Twin Arrows. And so the benefit is we have no pumping limitation on the sea aquifer. We're trying to protect the good source of water that we have 3 wells drilled near Twin Arrows. And we've made those agreements with 4 parties to try to protect that with pumping limitations and establish protection zones, certainly that border the Navajo Nation reservation. Next slide. This particular slide has the Navajo Nation in Arizona with allotments that are on the reservation and a few allotments that are off the reservation. The Navajo Section 1 allotments that are on the reservation will be included in the settlement, and those allotments will be able to obtain their water rights from the Navajo Nation's waters in the settlement. Those allotments that are off the reservation will not be included in the settlement. Next slide. Next slide. This next slide is a description where on one side it has litigation, on the other side it has settlement. Again, I tried to use a little bit of a visual. In general stream adjudication or litigation, which is basically you're in court, we've described it as kind of a slow-moving wagon, and it only includes kind of the claims that we started in 1985 on the Little Colorado River Basin. In settlement is kind of a description of a semi that has more waters included because it's comprehensive. It includes all the waters for the nation in Arizona, Upper Basin, Lower Basin, Little Colorado River, certainly the groundwater, affluent, and even the Big Boquillas Ranch waters in the Gila River Basin as well. In this slide, it has some bullets. And one of the first bullets under litigation is this concept of based on minimal need. In some of the Supreme Court cases, in the opinion has been the words of based on minimal need. And so this applies to when the United States reserves lands, and that reserving lands might be for a military base, it might be for a national park, it might be for U.S. Forest Services, it might reserve lands for a tribal reservation. The referred opinion language says based on minimal need. The Navajo Nation believes that this minimal need is a standard that must be met because it includes not only our past, present, but also our future needs for the reservation and our population growth in the future. And we've certainly projected out 100 years to try to secure sufficient water needs to meet that standard. However, in court, because it's an adversarial type of system and you have to prove up all your waters, one of the challenges for population growth has been the other parties challenge us, and they say, well, the 2020 census, which happened during COVID, kind of showed that there was actually a decrease of those living on the reservation. Certainly more were living off the reservation. So it became a challenge for us, and we saw what happened in the Hopi case. They made a claim for 90,000 acre feet. The special master only recognized 29,000. They proposed that their population would be 52,016 members. The special master agreed with the Flagstaff demographer that Hopi's future population would only be 18,555. And so Navajo has a concern and a challenge in litigation to, demonstrate, this future need and population growth that we used for the 2010 census and a 1.3% growth rate. However, the other parties, they have their experts. I think there were 5 experts in the case last summer. And so they were certainly challenging the Navajo Nation's assertion that we're going to grow at a 1.3% growth rate. And they were using the 2020 census to try to use their evidence against our assertion in that regard. And so in litigation, this based on minimal need is certainly a challenge for the nation. There are no infrastructure waters that come with litigation. you get title to water. So it's considered a paper decree only. And the judge would say, you have decreed water rights to the Little Colorado River, and this is the quantified amount. To the Navajo aquifer, this is your decreed water right to the N aquifer and amount. And for the C aquifer, this is your decreed water right to the Coconino aquifer and an amount. And so it gives you what we consider title. And the Navajo Nation is certainly seeking perfected water rights or title to, water for the Navajo Nation. But in litigation through court, you get no funding. You just get the paper decree water rights only as title. Again, litigation is very lengthy, it's costly, and it's uncertain. We won't know until after 2027 when phase 2 would be complete, and then maybe even another time frame, another year or so, what will be the special master's recommendation. And we would hope that we would get a good recommendation on the Little Colorado River Basin, but we just don't know. We have the example of what happened to Hopi that gives us some concern, but it's uncertain exactly what we would be getting. In settlement, one of the benefits is we've negotiated how much we will actually get. And so we just described that in the upper basin, the nation will receive 44,700 acre feet. In the lower basin, the nation would receive 3,600 acre feet of water, 100 from Cibola water in the lower basin, but the other 3,500 is fourth priority main stem water. That's certainly of higher priority than any cap water, and that has been taken off the table. In the Little Colorado River, we can get all the water that reaches the Navajo Nation, and that's historically been about 122,000 acre feet. It includes recognition of the historical irrigation use within that 122,000, which is about 40,000 on the Navajo Nation. I forgot to say, the way we've tried to protect those waters for the Little Colorado River is the upstream users have agreed to no new irrigation to protect those flows reaching the nation. The upstream users have also agreed to no new reservoirs. And so because of no new irrigation or no new reservoirs, we've negotiated how to protect kind of that estimated 122,000 acre feet of water that flows to reach the nation. Certainly, we're able to pump all the water we want from the sea aquifer, Coconino aquifer, and we can pump up to 8,400 acre feet on the confined portion of the Navajo aquifer, and we have no pumping limitation on the unconfined portion of the Navajo aquifer. So all of that is certain. We know exactly what we'd be getting. Again, it's very comprehensive. It includes all the waters for the Navajo Nation in the state of Arizona. One of the benefits, and another bullet under settlement, is we can obtain funding to not only make our title to those waters, make them wet water projects so that we can bring water to our communities. The best example is the New Mexico San Juan River Settlement. In the San Juan River Settlement, there is an authorization for $800 million that included up to $1.3 billion for the building of that Navajo Gallup water supply system project. If any of you have gone to Shiprock, you might have seen certainly the pipes being put in along the highway there between Gallup and Shiprock. There's also some of that pipe that's being put in between Kanayate Yatahe and Winderock. And so that is an example of a water settlement and funding that, initiated was for 800 million, authorized up to 1.3 billion. Because of COVID and because of inflation, that project has almost doubled. And so there's a bill in Congress right now to request another 800 million for the obligation that the Bureau of Reclamation has to build that out. There's an amendment that allows for water to go up to kind of the Sweetwater pipeline to take waters up into Utah, maybe extending some of the laterals in the communities along the highway as well. So that's an example of how expensive and how beneficial a large regional water project may be. So in the next portion of our, radio broadcast presentation this evening, there's going to be discussion about projects. And certainly one of those projects has to do with the Navajo-Hopi pipeline project and how that can benefit the nation and how expensive that might be. And so we use the San Juan River settlement to kind of demonstrate, how not only are we able to obtain water rights, but we're also able to get funds to bring water to our communities. And along the Cutter Lateral, some of those communities are already receiving water from that San Juan River project. There's the tools for better water management. And so that is an example is where we can agree with, the Hopi tribe, the Arizona Land Department, Bar Tipar Ranch, City of Flagstaff, to create some buffer zones or some pumping limitations. It allowed for us to create a shared water wash management program with Hopi to agree to some pumping limitations to protect the confined aquifer of the Navajo aquifer. So those are some tools that you can get in settlement. In litigation, you're typically not getting that. You're just getting actual decreed water rights to particular sources. The fourth bullet under settlement, it says authorization for water diversions and movement between states and basins. I think this is the most important bullet on this whole slide. The Navajo Nation is in 4 different states. The Navajo Nation is in the upper basin and it's in the lower basin. We need authorization, and that can only come through settlement through an authorization of Congress to make a kind of a change in the law of the river, to allow Navajo to take water from the upper basin to the lower basin. And so that 2010 Navajo-Hopi pipeline, taking water out from Page in Lake Powell or Lachie, bringing it down to Tuba City and to Cameron, that's actually water from the upper basin going to the lower basin, because Lee's Ferry is that dividing line between the upper basin and the lower basin. In the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project system, there is the opportunity to bring water from the San Juan River in New Mexico and to bring it along that Navajo Gallup Water Supply System project and bring it into Arizona at Winderock. However, we need authorization to bring that from one state into another state, or to bring water from one basin to another, the lower basin. The judge in Arizona State Court, they would have no authority to make a change in the law of the river to allow water to be taken from the upper basin to the lower basin, or to allow water to be taken from one state and to be brought into another state. And so Navajo absolutely needs to be able to use our waters from the upper basin settlement that's so valuable. We need to be able to take it to the lower basin. We need to be able to take it from one state and bring it into another into Arizona. It's Arizona waters, but it allows us to take it out from the New Mexico along the San Juan River. And so that authorization is so critical and so needed. That's why I think that's kind of almost the most important point on this whole slide. Just to summarize, because of we know exactly how much water we're going to receive because it's comprehensive. It includes all the upper basin water that Navajo can get, the lower basin water, Little Colorado River, Navajo Aquifer, Coconino Aquifer, certainly the Big Boquillas Ranch in the Gila River Basin. That's why we think certainly settlement is beneficial for the nation. It also includes, potentially large funding for large water projects to bring waters to communities, but also because we need to obtain that authorization from Congress to bring water from one basin to another basin or from one state to another state. And so that's why we think settlement is so much more beneficial than just going through the court general stream adjudication. Because it's only for the Little Colorado Basin. It's so lengthy, costly, and it's uncertain. That's the next slide. That turns I'm going to be turning the time back to the individuals that will be conveying this information in Denebazan.
Good evening. My name's Jason John. Before we get to the Navajo version of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the water projects that are proposed in this settlement agreement. Again, my name's Jason John. I'm the director of the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources. Tapahan Shle Aro Tlashish Bashish Chin. Kiani Tashinella Aro Ashi Tashiche. Nile Bahasla Nasha. I've been working with the Navajo Nation for just over 20 years now and have been a part of the settlements in New Mexico and Utah, and currently working to administer many of the projects in New Mexico and getting ready for the Utah side as well. For this proposed settlement agreement in Arizona that settles all of the nation's water rights in Arizona in several basins, we're looking at a total price tag of about $5 billion of projects to benefit the Navajo Nation, the Hopi tribe, and the San Juan Southern Paiute. Of the $5 billion, Navajo Nation would receive approximately $4 billion in benefits out of the $5 billion. So that is a large breakdown of what Navajo would receive if the settlement were to be approved and if Congress were to approve the proposed projects packaged that would be sent to Congress. The largest project in that mix is what we used to call the Western Navajo Pipeline, but now that pipeline will be serving the Navajo Nation western side, the Hopi tribe, and the San Juan Southern Paiute. And a little bit of background on how we gotten to this point. There's a lot of homes that don't have access to water. And for those of you who are watching the social media, there's a map being shown right now that shows the number of homes without water. And several years ago, that number The only clear number that we had showed at least about 10,000 homes across the Navajo Nation that did not have access to water. And majority of those homes were in Arizona. Go ahead and switch the slide. And I was beginning to talk about some of the proposed projects in the settlement agreement, and I was talking a bit about the pipeline that would service the western side of Navajo. That pipeline would carry a proposed capacity for Navajo communities of about 6,400 acre feet per year. To give some context to that, Tuba City has been using about 1,000 acre feet per year. And that Tuba City water system serves Tuba City and then many homes in that area. And it also is intertied down into Cameron right now. So they use about 1,000 acre feet in the Tuba City area right now. And this project would bring an additional 6,000 acre feet down that corridor from Lachee to Tuba City and the chapters in between. So it would bring a lot of additional water to those communities on that western side. It would tie into the existing systems, and it's a bulk water project, meaning a lot of these projects we're talking about in the settlement are to convey and develop additional water supplies and bring that water from places that have it to places that need it. And in this case, we'd be taking water from Lake Powell down to the western side of Navajo. And it would tie into the existing systems out there. And then it will also provide opportunities to extend those systems to meet the water needs of those unserved homes. And that is basically what all of these projects are designed to do. Some of them are surface water projects from the Colorado River. Other ones are groundwater projects. Next slide. I talked a little bit about the Western pipeline that would service the Navajo, San Juan Southern Paiute, and the Hopi tribe. There's also a Ganado area groundwater project that would basically start building out the infrastructure in the Ganado area using sea aquifer groundwater in the Ganado area. That project would expand that groundwater system in that region. It would upsize the system, and it would also prepare those systems to receive surface water in the future through the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project. That project also would be paying for the pipeline over the summit that would connect the Ganado area to the St. Michael's area. So that would be part of that project. There's also a Code Talker lateral project, and that's the development of the project in the Window Rock, Fort Defiance regions, the St. Michael's chapter, Sawmill chapter, Fort Defiance chapter regions, down toward Hunters Point, and it would be developing infrastructure in that region to bring more San Juan River water through New Mexico, through the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project. And we were also proposing a Four Corners project to bring additional San Juan River water from the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project through Shiprock, through the Four Corners area, and through Sweetwater, down through Rock Point to many farms, Chinle, and then another spur that would go to Saley wheat fields. Next slide. And we're also going to be proposing a project about Black Mesa that would benefit several of the communities up there relying on the in-aquifer water. Some of the projects include additional wells and pipelines in the Shanto Junction area that could be a benefit for economic development. The Shanto area, the Forest Lake area and around the Kitsili communities as well, and other chapters and other communities. So a lot of these are groundwater projects. So there's additional in-aquifer wells that would be developed and pipelines. There's also a Lupton area project where we would expand the Navajo Gallup water supply project again to bring San Juan River water down to the Hawk and Lupton area and all the way down towards Sanders to benefit the Navajo communities and homes in that region, and also bring additional water for economic development along the Interstate 40 corridor of Navajo. Going north, we're proposing to bring San Juan River water, diverting that water in Utah, and bringing that water through Old Jato and Monument Valley down toward Kayenta and some of the communities in that region as well. And then the last project on is also the Sea Aquifer Southwest Navajo project. We've already started phase 1 to build a loop to Delcon water line. That project is in the ground, and we're getting ready to start that project up. We have some delays because of the water quality in the loop area, but if we move further to the south, we know we can get better water quality. So that project looks at expanding the project toward the south. We were in loop last weekend talking about this project in detail. The cost of this project would be developing wells to the south, tying those wells into this project, and then upgrading the capacity of that line that's already in the ground with new pumps and new power systems to pump additional water to benefit the communities in the Loop region, as well as the communities out toward Delcon, out toward Whitecone as well. Next slide. I forgot to mention that we also have additional groundwater projects in the northern areas to benefit additional communities that may not be directly impacted by one of the surface water projects. So there's additional groundwater projects in the upper, what we call the upper basin communities. And then we're also asking for a fund to try to develop renewable energy projects to help supply the power that is needed for these water projects. Next slide. Some of the additional funds we're asking for as well are for operation and maintenance, because when we start moving all of this water around, water is heavy and it takes a lot of power. So in those initial years, we don't have the economic base or the residents to pay for that water by themselves. So we're going to supplement the operation and maintenance with a fund that we're asking for to assist with these projects in their early years. Over time, when Navajo connects more homes and more businesses, then the projects begin to pay for themselves for the operation and maintenance. We also have funds for agriculture and livestock. So there's an $80 million fund for Navajo. And then there's also a water acquisition fund. We'd like to build the ability to go into the Colorado River system and purchase water rights, additional water rights in the lower basin particularly, but the water acquisition fund would be there for that purpose. Next slide. And that is a really high-level summary of the proposed projects in the proposed settlement. Once again, you cannot get these projects funded through litigation. It's only through settlement discussions or through the current framework of appropriations. Thank you.
Ya tela kodo ya ngilche hot abalgana keche kujiko ke ya at nek echiko o akan be ekhan hat neniki it ego ya kodo ngilche hotit ahin leko di ki kweke ngilche cheda had ke diki diki ya chinane di in shedoshi ye diki kodo ki ngilche tit aro da u nin da itiketla di kishe ya ba da hoshi ba hol jishwa kodon ngilche tit di kweki ki sanad kitten linike ya tobe inat diki ya hut ego ya bakha adon de ta at the chon iti tro adon de ta clean tropa do khas to ohona nat adon de ta ya tla hugo kishi ya kun diki be in di ta ko di de pindan di na da ochinate zeto jo kui ge yanki ni khane ki son ki wo sto adon de ta ya ko khweta al ichian a kweki ki jo uta ya be hozani ye a kwiche ya kun de ki chi ni in leko jinda te ya chi da na mazapedi neniki kun de ki edota ye ne ni yote de ya badagan chi jinda ako diki betsando troge ya tishin diki kun diki benke tra ya hot akonda osts iso de ya nat o hanni de ya kodon ki tisha shle kweke Jinda ne kitchen da hui na o sto ko de ki han so shin ya ha tra je chon tra akis adon de ta na da ke don na da sui be na sa adon de ta ko de ki de yen bazad ade aji ki be hi no tra do hut ego ya de no sen ki to ge ya chino jo chale ya tobe be bil ze no hut ya ba che ta hat ahn le ko Ako don leide a chi hon le saho ya hut ego ya na hosa baka nan getilya de les chi tra kisa nigo hut ego ado dances ke de ende ta le hut ego ya kon de ki dishin de ki ya troge hut ego ya ba che huit ado de ta equador ki nikilisha inilzen o nikina haga beta hasko ado trodan lenigi to ikon budget da hodlo troba kaki do troba adiki nitsaba adi do nitsaba kaki ado ndeta betisen nes hat nenigi do betison do donit eta kilto ohut ego to trogi budget da hodlo ado ndeta yatselchi tro ko hat nigo to to ohut ego yatische anigi ohut ego banate ako hote ya kodo she yetin lini kodo shi ya di de kweke ba huin in donald sosta nete to ke ya hat so ki adon de ta chi ki to ko de ki jo tos ante oban sa ke so ke ya di tos ni ton hin das na ko de ki ton ki na go ich da bez ke ako di ki ben na go kin hilkaz an ke di ke ya di ki ta hoti so ke quigi ya pe hozen koki acho koki ya kodoki benist ya trodan tsade dan lenigi ya ko tek en di dado le to kwaki ki ya an ki ya chi di to chi di to kwaki chi ni indo le di ya yisit ako hote ya kodoshi ye da ze a don kilcho hodo achi ye
Driananat Eitla sé Robert Kurt Ainge le kilchedo in Asha le alle graide hasne ado et se ke distige in le tentades ade ke haste ko twitchini Ainge ado na kredne e bashchin ma idishkini da chedo tupa e da shinale nit au e de nensle ado de nebelta in niche na Trobelta in Nishigi but Biado e Nashin Shiko Ado e hydrologist Elia in Sneko e Tubinjil Nesoshido Tubetjan Niado Tuba Ajil Kaushi Ahil Sneko I Hashin so the neck at Baka that is leader Mr. Tuli in the neat so it Nasna Kido Liso. دي كأنها الكيديكي جهل كيديكي أوتا إسنوت أنكي ساشيا سوشيال ميديا بيجي إذا نوت إديد دي يا دنبكية نا هالكيد إشتا نز نزتينو أنزنا نخيل خطها السويكي chapter بدي نيجي إن بكخا إناش أروح أو إيتا بكخا نلبا ساي أو يد تخطلو دات نلصدها أكود lime green or teal that's a dish نساي أوسن بايا أكود دي أو بشخاوت زوجي كويب إن هيك أستكتو دنبكية بكخا إن هيل خطها السويكي بكخا إناش دي تخون لينيكي بشخطها السوغوت دي Colorado River دي نينيكي بتس إسناز بدي نيكليكو تاشيكو بشخاوت زو آدو يشيكو دو بشخناهوت زو lower basin وليه وتاشيكي upper basin وليه آدو ندتا بيون يا little Colorado River basin وليه يشو بشخاوت زوغي يا تخشيكو إذا بدي نيكليكو دو بكخا إنداشت دي تخاناز نلبل خدها السوغي خيشي يا دو أو بابك تاستي جو دي داشت كو إيجي أوبا نخبا أخو نصندو لي تخب بندا السوغو دو تخب الخدها هو السوغو شي upper basin بدي نيجي إن لي وكان كيلو أجو برنساي خدني لي أدو نحو كوشيكون ليج إن لهدون ليتن ساديز كنا تخون لني تشن لي واش upper basin واليجن أدو ندن ليتون كيانتا هو ليدو أدو أجو نحو كوشو تخدن له لجونا كريك لبدينا upper basin أدو لتشيئي أدون دا بيش خاكيد أي بيتخوتا دا هوليه إن لين نهو كوشو تخوتا ليني بيتاز لكو upper basin ودا شكو بتسيس نازي بدينا وياشكو هناهو تزوغي إن لي تسلت جين بغات ون لي شتا آتشكو تخوتا تيزله أدو تخونا نستز دو شتا آتشكو أدو كان تخيلو شتا آتشكو إن لي تخشي كوبدي نه little Colorado River ليا أجب بين دست له جو lower basin بخاطو بكستك بيونا little Colorado River تخشي كوب ليني كو يتاي أن خبا أن السندول لي أن نل إني بك هسه دي تخوبا هين إنيكي يا كوبا نهديش نخاشين سكو بتسيسن ناز Colorado River وليه اللي بتاخ استيقي تخو لينيكي أدون لي تخوت هدية دي little lake Powell بدي نينيكي دنا أحد سهل دس تخنيكي تخو لينيكي بينيت إكو بتسيس الناس نك أشجو بينيت أكو خيط نان 1922 يا أشايت ميلو ناس إذا تدو ناكي خهادا إيتا شي واشنطن يا ينستيدو أشخاط زاغو شيد إدي بشخاط هاسوغي 7 states بدي نينيجي يا أشتينز واتشكو بتسيس نازي دوليشنا ويشو دو بتسيس ناز بشخاط زوي دوليشنا آرو كنت خدا دزله بی صاده دزلنگی تون لنگی این خاله جو ایدی از this is ایشنه کنیه یا بت انی بلکانک اشکو یا acre feet per year این acre feet ایشی یا هشنه یا استخارون اشنی دمیلتسا از this is اشتاج یا اشتایزونه أكو هاشين سو أجيكي أدون داش أشايدونا أشني دميل سو إيدو مهيكوج نا كيش باكي هات إنج إيدو إيدنا على أكو أوشي تون لينكي إشتينزو 1922 يدا compact والينكي شي ديتا أشتايزو أدون دتا دبلني بشخطها السوغي Chas tleibich gehad zorge, aro so lepich gehad zorge, aro de bensage gehad zorge, aro yo troge, aro de he sheetje, aro na Josh gehad zorge, aro na shibik gehad zorge, California, it ashe ia twin linigi eia, pas atasso. Aro de eia, chananal kidig eia, de bits isen nas bedi ninigi. Bilchahod zogi in Hananash to the upper basin ado the lower basin or Yenigi ado con Nichnesis trage de Yahashin so ebishata has so in Abaka ecoia and needy ebahasi co de Yahashin so trot and lead Ashi ea betahod zoko a basin bidi neatly could de Nash Colorado River Basin. A couldn't kehan the nebekaya linigia Kasita aunt and the le the tro but season as beschahot zogi epi yon yan the nebekaya a hodlo sisiko yan lecha archico Rio Grande William le besti lassen aj tro linigi aj beschahot zogi aj a latin hidden de kei the holla sto out a ba so ishi sto hodina banani not is aro di tro hajin so astrasi astrado nashni the mil so as this is the shninigi what dachko betzisen as beschahot zoge percentage de shnili Epi what jo alkadis jo 7.5 million acre feet nahach holno she yandatna ebnach your toj 11.25% out of that 7.5 million acre feet is new she with aro katis table hot so the 18th at the percent is linigi on the bensage 51.75 a snit on a balahoshi a percent the a 7.5 magis about that ado so late a not deemed over at 23%. A here shincha is hot zogi a host a bit said she 50,000 acre feet banded so she bahanat that's only a 50,000 ashladin the media is this is a banded so she the ton linigi ko adochinat zegi a 80 klajob khata hasogi is khandis percent gibik ya we yachiko bitisen nas bkhanaho zogi what nana Asharon Ashni the meal so as this is Tobat or Zoyagi Nahach he shinto Bashahot Zogi na kido say B 2.8 million dishne the meal so as this is a aj a ton lini ebit honali na Josh Bashlas ani 300,000 acre feet honanat adon dan lin Naha or Jehash it is Nisha California 18th over 18th the Milsa as this is the 8 Linigi bandit Nahachiko. The bits are the Hodina Roshi Yabanahan net or Lichanana Kido. The bits are the Toba the Hadis and the Yito Eya the Twiniki the Toba that Anigi Edo the gold the good net Bahuin Inigi. Litigation or adjudication will yani di bitsaro etrup bitsa ba il nashi to lis au ibansana kisle on the acre feet no kage it ahi yashti eshe ha olie je tropa win ko ya di bit bikabit naz as this is a bit the schnitzel acre feet has now ish olie di shot jot being that you not jotly thaligi being that you none le I can't nenegi in sogi alla. This is tubi had is been o legend 1 acre feet. Had neza dino ba ana di stla de milia jodoba an se bid neza dino ba an alla ha giz. Da kalon da bedi nicht eshi o lie alla as this is eshi o beb ha e ban so kisto lejko. The question on as Kidige Colorado River Compact 1922 that height AD betsisch da niet linige hashin so nihitet bekha so die tro as gaat is anagi die beschat hasogi jo hashin so bahash bayast konel na budget da hadis atishne aro tro Bahuint iniki betsisch paniki jo Washington did kaya nhadi diz anegi bik ton linigi binnache benina di beschata hasogi heshi yo troje so le de benza dat any beschata hasogi bada hadis anabiyedo tro betsisch binigi Bejada liado le ado benach twini kido le dit au she bansa hakiso le ado di to baskat that anigi 1922 da edo on hashin so Washington de hikides iki do yiho den stito do le hot au hikides do le Washington de Aro quachananal kidigi hot out the nebekaya chananal kidako eshi hajo ayat ehonatash chako a quit end di a he shinchibesha hot zoge kabada ilneko aron de leo toje yabaschana hot zo tachobesha hot zogi Upper Basin San Juan River Basin olia the Queen Haida she neat aj beta and niche lena George don't lay troco was all loso rota layat head only saga how sunja was all loso the trobadana trobana as nelo tajne akoyego aj beta and niche troba tanashe eben nach aj da niche adon le tro Linigi bezigon aje dat lienshiki edo steta dit aje beta inish dit dat anigi benache aje da inish aron le sole hot zogi aje den hitten nebel hat hasogi Red Mesa da dalia aron dat ol J2 the Navajo mountain the aje beschata hasogi do aje to anido schreich nit akho aje to hashin so khadina goshidi jin that in taroshi do change shi ko ton lingi hashin so aje benada dijin shiko akho aro di belo sto le yo toje khahot zogi aje to lingi le Rio Grande it bits aus lekina Rio Percodishne ado Rio San Jose ajin hitne aja bekhahot zogi sto edo hashin so ton lini baskat edo atrapa wind akko aja to qadan be landa ilehko ashin sto atichi Bol Katolich, Adon the Zuni River, Leo Troja Hahot Zogi, Eshin Shoa, Ketnana, Ahot Banahuint, Eko Eshin Hashinza, Nahol Jij Esto, Hashin Soka, the Nabitate, Natos Kishiko, Dik Abenit, Inige, Heshi, Hahot Zoja, what Dachiko, but is Nez or Liobel Hahot Zogi, Ado Yashiko, but is Nez and Zombel Hahot Zogi, Adon the Koshi kohn lobes hahot zogi abahuint eko. Dit anashta. Den nen linnigi tro bahwint o ya jo na kigo ya hashin so tro bahwint inigi sa ina. Two methods in the sheet seheki ya gwol de gunne litigation general stream adjudication yisne dit yuz en le gwol de gunne ya hit in sheet de ya bahwint o ya hashin so ya ton linigi ya bahwint on de quishin da hut ya aj sa ya just in rond na ki gunne ya asrajt settlement o lienigi ya eshi ahesne makat danet at ado beches kisten pito bahwint onshi schatajd shi ahesne jo aj he shinche beschahot zogi hot ya di kwa bahwint shi sto akho Walt de gunne ya iki ha ishe benina akho ya di betsinch kliji betbanit inigi ha ishe benina a he shinche beschahot zogi kunne bahwint jo quina khaida shi a McCarran amendment will ye yito no ya jo ton linigi betsinch kliji ben ya asrat that hiki ya die he shinche that yo toje beschata hasso ajo gol de ban has aj bahwit not in so ben nach nanle a he shinte dit bahwit die courts with lenigi aj ben na bahwit aro bahwit inigi gol de gunne litigation khan inigi le he shipes gehad so jiki at the bedat igi in le toshi ko de snenagi ajiki bahwint in ya ben ye kat ya gold de gunne bahwint little Colorado River di snenagi ko is shabah on the sindolis ado asrat nit settlement hat nenigi edo de be he shite ya bahwint jo khala aje ya betro ya bet aber o ilne dit bahwint jo kat bahwint inigi negotiation hat ninigi is got that hat ninigi ya what dashiko bits isnaz beschahot zogi bikestigi de trogi bahwint il adon de na we yachiko bits isnaz beschahot zogi lower basin Colorado River nini up beyond bahwint il adon da toshi ko bit the shnigi aje beschahot zogi up bahwint ila ko die ochnat ano bahwashnet listi Mr. Tooley cried that's a shadoba na
Hakoshila yat adon de kodon kilchotish ahin lenigi ya de kwakiki oze yakini kis ani beti neniki kodo ya ape hatzi niki kwakiki troki hut ego japan sikis do honelt ot ya kiso do des is neniki tron ha do DGA ya akut dorle akonde net DGA ya kodokin kitisha de shnisho di kwigi kachil kidiki ya kade this din doba hastrana kha kweke ba huint ingo ako elke kona gonna kha keho ya kundi ki sahoda bakha diki ya kodin ke national kidigi ya nos ingo hota la jish in the data that's about when jo hut ego ban saha case hut end digi kita ako this thing over astrana khayata hut ego del khas yado ado banache in lingo ya ban hat Ako ediki no ingo ki leiden kis ani a yakini bayo ajiko ki eya akut ego eya pete hatzi ako diki kwekisho se biting doba astrana khego se biting doba astrana khego diki eya kunelt ki eya kis ani lenigito a yakini beti nenigi kweke tach ohot Kude slatin doba ana kitemil diki ya hunelt etorlik epihui nako. Adon detta kweke johot ego hat zio nal sosikanin nal sosigi ne denned nal sosigi ne denned lo yati dan sade lekinda ochiki ade goki ya ade hey hit aban sokkes ni hirla hit ela Ako hot yan leke llanade ade la ha otzi Nike ke ya kwajinginal so sto adle hinde haitso hoki de o chilto le liki ya to ya shlatindo ana kitamilia to ya hunelt etadole Nike ya se pizza de milia ni Ahunelt at yan hipan sikes ahunot eto letide yakini no tleniki do ya de cuida hana na iliago ino tragedo ahut eda ebeni na ya ajiko ke ya bicho asli de ketlanaje ako dike bandil sos Ado unter der Bekehrung ya trohge hunelt yini ke dole trohge ya hunelt des is has aniki hat nigo nast dike ya di ku dike ya nast din de mil yaja a hunelt ya tron habaja o nigo a yakini dokis ani dike ya hut ego yete hat zi Adon detta kodonal sos give ka hananal sos. Ishashi do kinada hasoha no. Akot ya kweki ge panahot ak de yakini do kis anin lenigi na tin doba anast de miliasha. Hunelt ot ya kodigi tron habaja do nikhat no. Akot digi yoke digi ya tradel anat zogo atlagot ya babits at ako. Digi yanati no manas de miliasha ahunelt de habaja to think ahut ego yan habaja al yado de kino kede to ahut eda akot ya ahut ego jonal so sigin de netlo digi ya lekla asluden dite kito leto nal so sigi ya kuige ya isi yita des ito let asha kuido let nigo Ako digi kabahuint eniki ya kunde niki na be honit leniki na hoka de ne enit leniki shashi do kunde ki ta chohotit as nast et do ba strana khego digi ya trad ne zatin do ba dis ding de mil yasha quick ya bahuint eniki ya ti kunde trad nas nele Snahas anko de tselchi kweke troi na go keta hat iniki diki ya testin do ba tio hunelt et ya kun diki hunit la do le ya hat nigo ya nal so sigi hita hasso ako diki ya kun diki de neblisha de ya ako kade ya kun diki trohanato kis tro des es hat niniki se betin do ba shlat de mil diki ya sebetin roba de milia se honet ya trohoki yini kid ako diki trohokin habaja to ni enki de neki ye kin de dato le sebetin roba le hastrana jo kunza got ya to lad ako ya to skago da do hona hot ego ahot ya ku diki da hunit to do hot ego ya nal kata Lenes not the dob no nach I don't know what you go with ego what asin lenigi di don't that the code nidi about johona an lenigi na ke kodi ki ba huint ko dil sehge kage e kohort eda hol jisheta ita ya ahut ego ya ta chita ho ko e diki lahon da hasne e hat khali hat zi adon ditan kinant akuden has twin lenigi Dr. Peterson za ad to ikenin nel sad e ad ikit nebetis chanel ya adon ditan ke ostkatan lenigi to nan e ad iki hata hasi ako kasada tsin de zed kweke chita hui aho ako ho digi kabach na ho jistin da inisho nana e digi e ya kweke ki na sosigi kwe ja hut e gon kishonita sa digi labaka na dot e digi e ya kwige e betato na alte nido lehtide da inisho adon de tante zeto e digi e ya akwige na te zedigi ade kweke ki e ya kweke ilche window nich e kweke sa digi ilche beto ado bekiao nege na kiko nege beche na ho jishin leko di de kweke ba huint e de shnenigi des di do ba astrana khaya nenigi kweke je hoto na hoto ato kweke pe hozeno to litho ya ein kana na khego de ende ta hozendo lit ako benit ya kodoki ya nahagan leni adon ke hatrali data ako ya truchita inigi be hozeno otato li John lede jinjeho ta trushje asla asa atle do ta yan len ta de ya tron trushje hinsragi kwisa atle jo bigita de no tradorle adon de tandi de kutrotan lenigodo Hans so jetzt na lini chio inigi to ado so hada hikito kunde na losh zesta dat do pita dat to kweki ki khanel ya kwige trogi chi de do lenigi ado on dat ben anisto lehigi do na nisben do ben dan yesto lehinde ta etiki diki ya chinata hoto ke oneki kwige ya ba chita hoto adon da kodoki sad deki ya hanet leaning adikit leaning cheta iniki jokweki ya chi don non himayaje agat ahit so ya kwige yete hatsi ida kodoki cheta de yaki ako diki ya kunde Hans so shi ya keya jo ba hui neo diki ya khalin le na ho khosho ke da hat jo ke ya han ke lon sa go hata hui soki jo so dot ya kwige troki ya ke ya betran na dan le diki ya kwige babje don da ke da hat iniki ko ke yi shi gi da ya di ko ke ya totchi ko ko ki na ko ke da hat iniki jo digit ya hut ego ku digines nalt ego beta det ne betseschliche kha go ki gisi ba ta diasle na be hon leni o zekis ani bayotsen ya ni hier ko ki in khawido sabdo ni adon data tion ne ki yasi ne loziki torle ado hos tochiki sto Kuding hos dojiki ajo da anisto na anischin da hodloniki diki adon da troik edes ingi dot keya hik edes ingi sto slatopetet adon da kojon le nana ahat sa je ton kelo da haide yeniki ja aji go beshi ko so han no go ko ya la yo so what sto bije baiso adon da tan le ke sanachito adon da hans so shi yakudiki hawa keya do han so she yan nat anis chin kun jo ke da hat inigi jon late is ya ken ado chishita dan ne besenel ado on dan le la ho ya benago ke da hat inigi diki sto da hil so ni he sto ko ki ein kha so ado le ni he sto ne bikia til ketane nana ado on detta kwiki sto hadet la toina hadet la trota digi kweki ti kweki trobacha to nitli kundiki bach danit ajo lebets isnes bishranes neniki ado und Serchi koha nenigi kweken lenigi to nana adon lehle yedigi trodan lenigi jo aji ko ton lenigi ado ki ya trogi ndeti khat adon data digi ya akwigi ya beho zenadorle adon data ya kwadoki jo kweki ya le na ho koshiko kweki ba chhot di de koje hoz to jehaz aniki diki kwekiki ya ashlatin temil yasha akhonelt ya bja ya na be ho ya tisdido ba think asta tisdido ba ashla temil yasha akhonelt asta ende ba den khadet akho nas dot kisha tsabuhi na ho asla peso khashiki diki ya kwiki ya jin hit or le diki ya khoto ni adon de tanana ko ki ya khojiki hoya ha kon leniki ya kuntiki nana ya tsete na do de hito kwiki na ki to khonana ako aji ko ki sho thohlola le yisin le Ozoki kweki shipi todo hozdojo ozoki kweki kasabu hui na ho kweki tota tlabaja nanalia digi to ade goki to nha de dot benachi goki ya kudiki be indi da dot lecha no digi ya hut dot lech adon data ya kudiki nana goki baja nanalia niniki digi ya selchi koha ningi ajo ton linigi digi nash ngi ya behozani ye john le iso oyoto ishigin lenki ke ya hashni kweki kis ani yakini kwigi yake hat ako digi trodan lengi khande ya trodan lindole to ya tata to tla ako digi o zebe ke ya honna akonna aki ya kundigi ton lengi lindole adon lenki ke ya chin lengi adigi to hd ako digi ya hut ego khande dan lindole to tata to tla ako kwigi ya hut ego ya stoppe khatet aslin adon de tan len de trohodlonigi nana sto na hotlo jona be hobji ki la hut ego tro ako ekin letle ye de hodlonigi sto digi troyat higi ko kwege chil kidigi you see the kang has anigi oyo niki hechiko keya ha kwege la ya akwegi nki keya hagi hodlonigi benachiko ki ya trohogi sto ade sto khadot los di hunne dor tizo ade ki ya trohogi ape ade khadonna diki ya kundiki ya belratnit aniki na be khochiko ki ya kundiki ya bacha ya diki ya trohad o dor le to adochon dor le ki ya behozani ye ako ya se bi de mil ahonelt ya ti des es biti nini kasa se bi to ba asni na akweki na hoijisho ya kweki togi chinil indole akonde bi yedoge na kitamiliki ya bena no hiesho be kendo tago ade go kin khabaja ya ki ya hut ego chido jo hut ego ya na akoti digi tro yesi troya hekit kotrotla kanigit adon de tabekeo ne eke ya oze kodo kwei bedgatet aniki ishlatemil yashado kasta asni nan oyo belaho kunelt ode yabachanda det ako akonde yati digina kitamil kwigigi ya hit koda an kibek endotago to apo honetsa digit ya hut dole adon de tan le cocanino neneki sto ahonanat chiko ki sto tro sto yisin kelo da hide di kweke kodochel kitten leneki ya Nleishi bi todo the bensa do troche do kweke hos doche. Aji go git dan letle yete hunt ego e yati de yana had no do klishigin letle yete trohadno. Akonde e aji go ki oyo trote kronj e digi e ya hut ego e ya obe hosen do le don tlashin ki beda hosen aji troda planiki ko oyo de kronj le eko. Ako hote ya kuigigi e ya han so she khana det a hoz to chudo o zedo ketlan ado kuigi e ya beka shidan den khadigi to ako eke be eti leida hodloniki e to heit e ko e ya tol zendole beta ako il chito le ko eke e da nil skodat nil zeno e ya e to le ado ndeta na be keone nan kliniki e ya choke ya ho e ya sa na hotlo ei digi na losan lini ei kites ei article ke a quick ei kites ke ya ti ke ya ki hata haso ki etsat ikisa tata bati ni la shi hut ego ei ya sa ei yan ke ya ki khodlo adon data ei digi ei ya ei hut ego ei ya ti te kon le tata jenako ei article ki to honana ko ei article ke asatinana todle adon detta kide kuna kikes at ego eya kodi ki hli da haznel na hadden jo ada huint eniki eya kwacha isi pa huint stido eya o trohoki eya o isne ko da tsain kitchen hutod ni adon detta kwaki ki eya trohoki eya na soski eya hut ego eya na khatod sos akon de yal di trobeto loso be chiteido in lenige do bohonet sada edo la behes onda dodle de enda ta e oyo oyo ne hiten ta dodle le kwiki ki ta wint in jo hot oyo chita ha khalle don ta to ha de shin dot to be hozenda anza go yego ba na ha to to yo adli dodle benina kochiko asgat nit anko chiko ki ashon an khaya at dodle digi toini ke digi be hosaniye adon that trogi kwaki in khabaja do ni khaniki peshpandas ado le to benda don shiki ajiko ke ya digi bod khatole adon that ya ana losigi do ke testi ki to abe da hosen lindole akode ya kwaki ki ya jon leda akide dan le ki hawana mazda the chat nebayan jakawa nat ki hat ni lente eb ka taniki bajad aked on nat ki ho adot nelchi daten pito han soshi akot ego ya asgat dot ato asgat bit ahin leid an ki kishin da huid na ode ya hut ajon khayat etorle kodo ya kisin lini kodo banatin an lidorle kodon kichina hodot hade la troche dot los hat neniki kade adenan Robert.
Yeah, la ya nanat Mr. Tooley again junon hicha hananin zi aro unta hada isi yo kiziki aro naide dish kit no son ya bi peshnat na besh panneiki kan sadnat hat ninigi ishi in de north trashnast na kise bi nas bas astla astransus dit ashe ya in Bashin Linigi, Texas Linigi, a phone number, in China, Khadwa, Ladashin, Janani dish, Nast, na kise B, na se B, Nas bas Strasus, it Aushe, Hina, the kid Holunigi, in the North Transico. Quake, I got that, Linigi settlement. Ishe bi yona dasto ishe AIC ben yakwa banaho ako I say the kwakin nashcha yak the Navajo Nation the ne kayan kishahot zogi aro kontratnas nelin kishata has zogi yak ash that ya dashcha that society that chiko jinel just how ya edit Linigin he ran ya hataz and edi خاطناز نلبس خاطر هالسوقي خاش إنادنا رون هيلي هتاز ليدا دي هو دحين آغو دي بيناشتاكو دادن الشيكي إن لينا كدني زاتين دو بالله هو دنلو يا خدو بس هتاز ليدا جي خد إناشتاكو آدو يا هتيس آدو شبانانا نزاتينو ما أشتلتين دون لينا كدني زاتين بتخاي يتخاطنا زنلبس خاطر هالسوقي بيونا يا هاشين سو تخون لني دو بس يهداز وات ناتاش تشاكو كنا يلو دو يلينيجي تخدتين هالوش تسوقي شي شتو نانا وات يا نزاتين دون لي نزاتين دو أبا أشلتين جي هون لنيجي دو تخبش يهداز وات شي بكها إن ناتاشا يهوديس يوتن بحكي شلتين دو نزاتين بتخاي يا نهوديس شلتين دو بتشين ديت دي كونتاشاكو جنش كو نهتن خاطنا زنلبس خاطر هالسوقي أكون دولا نتخبش هداز رو دا خيي تهوندنا أني دو تخبش هداز نيدا إيشي إيديت إينيا إكوا تلكد أكوجنش دي إيه شينش بالخهود زوجي خيي دلشي دو دلبا بالخدها السوكو بالخهود زوجي ين في النت وهوانا تخبش هداز نيدا إيشي دي كوابن يا ناشتاكو خشيت دي تخد لنجي نهيت خادوتس دون هيت خاطنا ليش إيشي بالناتش بانسو كيسوليش أكون سجنانا الكد دي النبكية بالخناخوتزو بكخاي يو تقوصنا لندن نستزو ناشتا دي كون انتيو بدي نيجي كون بتكون لينيجي كونتر دي جو جو كون داشتا كو تقوصنا لندن كون دنب كي بكخاي داش existing NTUA system بدي in بكخا ناشتا كو نش دي نبكي بكخا ده هويز تبدأ أنو أنت تبك إن داش الجنو داتا الجنيكي يهون تبش لي هذا زليدا إن بكخا تهين لكو جنش ييغو نلي هيشين هيشخاوت زوغي خيين هيدن هم وندهنا تخدو بس هذا زليدا إيشي بنية دي بين بالنشط بانسا كيس بنية بالنشط نج دي النجك تخبشتا إنيشتو انتيو ياتسديز كيزو ينهز يتيتا الشيء ناتاش water line proposed water line خيط تكون لينكي النبكية تخطي ليدو اللي تخطى خزلودون اللي تخطى الزنج خيط بتخطى تيز ليدو اللي كون مستر جيسون جان نحسن نجونكو خارج تخطى خزلو خارج تخيات خزلو خارج نخدن كون بتخطى هسو تخو يتن كون تكون لينجي لاكو بيجون إيدوكي بكون بتخاز ليش دو خيط أتهدو نيش إيشي بنيا بنيا ناشتاكو تابا نافش نقولش دي إشغادات تكون لينجي تو خيط تهدو نيشلكي يا لينجي budget budget جيو تخوج هتا تخبا إشغاد نيت بيسون لينيجي يا باتشتات شاتا شكو Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project واليو اللي تخوتون اللي نجورج جو تيني بتسيجو أكون تخبا ناز أنجي يشي هني Tropana as anigido da naznel tronas da yilt orita o yita neko aj yazn linigi beta is nishiki tropa schatet anigi bitsano ko die je shincho bkhana ho zogi die shin yakwake en kislin stratolis a large ike ya Navajo Hopi pipeline isne ishi in le tro da hade yin le dat na outside Lake Powell bedien are le chi aje beschouwd zo de are to hat los aron da troba al on ade shata archikon le beschha geht adon de kaipi toj go da edo da sna pas rapetin do na hasan do ton nestijiko e au shi il net ton linigi pa na au ado epi on nesto kis anin linigi hashin so betolto shi satnani lost or le tona nestes do satnajigo mon copy bedi ne ado shi in nasen le kis ani ke hat enjigo first mesa second mesa third mesa do ki mis canyon da holye hot au shi di bikido bikeho payet dit ton linigi ade hat los di surface water bedi ninigi ajo den lini betrazli do lit ba asoko bekeo net banada asoke de nejogogi projects iki banada aso look an kiel hahot zoki yach hashin so jo ara twichi yosh inigi yasha kon sea aquifer bedi ne coconino aquifer bedi ne ade ya ba da as au di stig chi need aro look an kilo kentle chido look an kilo aro topa da as in le quack the nature de yosh aro shata archigos got le clagget to the hasne aro the cornfields the hasne aro the wide ruins the aro le archigo steamboat aro the jada to the das leko edo yard linisa bada dot asto abi gisiko aro adis sago aro ayat ehon das nisho in the dolni edo yard lini budget on aro kun nebana asogi co-talker lateral bedien ahdi nada your toja basket that at the Shinegi Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project with Yego troba na au is nan le tro lenedon le nin hanzara tro hat los ade shata archikon le nan George do shata archiko bahad le do chachiltra don le kin junj go do le church rock do ayan betoja go ajo dazle aron le yat don le ashro tsala ho janj go ajo shabana au isne de bik yachi ke co talker lateral ya de ya hadan so da benedo asto alla ade betolne di kwepe hot zogi yo tojo he shich be hot zogi satnan dot los arot hot so dot sa hot so aron the danle red lake the hatles sawmill aro ashikun le kwake das tranigi summit da bedi ne belaho dot loshon lake in the chidon lake until ajiban as ani bed dots aj ashha holiado le kwake pana as aro kunne pana as hogin le di likaya bel hot so hidati anje Four Corners Project bedi ne edo ade hashit le trodon le ashiko beklap trot da holje adon le tisnas bashiko adon le tosle khan ade la tuba na edo nasna dot los jo in le yo a shipi tubel hot jo nekita hat enj aj esto hashin so bit nas hot ne aro he shipi hot zoj ade tosle khando ade round do tensades nazlin mini farms adon the chinle adon let's say lido wheat fields go goed dat ajo nas na dat tot city ade trote ton linigi goed kwebana so aro kunnen let se change bil khawal ajin fitne ko the neck Eshopeo Navajo aquifer bedi ninigi aj nayik in the aj confine in aquifer olia edo hashit eya nihiten hajo betras arolich adan zago do hajo tropana azneladon le hashi discago hajo chon ino benia edo kwag epana aso eya Adis sago to nicht do at ego to nicht aron da ashkitati out ich halia di tuban as anigi dit ebana as so aron le shata article aj a teen I-40 bidi ninigi na George don le Sanders holie de kwagina na hat atzi na has e kwasat na na teenike ade Navajo Gal Water Supply Project with Yenegi Ade Achiko Nasnati still not in Georgia do le Lipton Jitsatna needs Sigo Adon the Hawk Adon the Nahat Atzil Adon the Oak Spring Joda Edo Ed Ado Banas Sahashin so Ajo that's in hidden there Aj Kayat Kata hat Inigi Ajdo a Lupton area project with Yenigi Ajibana Ado Bas Haki ya in aquifer the Nejo ya tup neck actually the Tohalonigi do see aquifer bidi Ninigi Ajachio Inigi Edo Doshabata Sutton the Edo Benilni inscription house on Navajo Mountain Colmine Mesa Shanto Tunalia Edat Inigi Ado Cove do Red Valley da hot da bridge aedo hashin swal yarn zini bayaki Ado that Kienta or Liege Aje Hait Ea Aje Tot Hobadot Los Aedo Hot Ea Linigi Bansahas Cage Ade in Le Trote that's Le Halchi Trate Hatnili Ade Nashat Loja Shata Archigon Le Oljitra Aquaman Valley Sabine Skabidi Nende Ade Satnando lost on Le Shata Archigo Quakianta Tudnesh Jo Aj it los Adon the Ade was stand chief chimbi to do the net then a hutso Edo Ebato this case or Edo Yadini Yashavice Adon le shata ashore ashakon hilchahot so Navajo nation Edo loop dabadi nendon le tosh chinjigo Edo hashita ea aja elto si aquifer lienigi chiyosh eko are quacket hashin so ayat ayuhadno ebony nach aders tohad hatahas loz quacket the yosh idolish adot city tona halne tulani lake adot hosh chinatisto that any Indian Wells white cone only Greece which go quacket betrai Edo hait hata hajo steda dort nicht do hajo als ajo tonaga oder nicht au she baso this case diban hasus net do nicht quacket aro honne ton linigi projects bedi linigi ban hasus net aro na belache to inigi do to hat ya ya ha ishe ya that's an ispedi ninigi ishe be holando lich national titolich the pas so Navajo Nation Renewable Energy neko hashin so Edo linigi hashin so bana aso ko eben nashin so ban sa hakis di sun kishigi yachi yo idolich tobanda as angi Aro honne ke digi Navajo Nation operation and meets yosh walido benach anal inido da chko benach eda in do yal basa aro ot di tobana as ati no atalia gi le o talia da ad da tselo in hidden ato hajoyin de nosto di operation and maintenance fanigi trashin so a shadow that's ye canal what only eight as to pass it also Bahadiyala Aro Kone the Navajo Agricultural Conservation Fund in hidden but the better Hadloni because of the Hadloni don that shigi believe over big kashi that the Hadloni don that shigi that the lay Hashet Abakati Lut Edo Yard and Linisha acquire person but nan Suslako Aro Kont that is Lindo Tobandi Basiki Edo Benish Stata Naita Edo Tun Lini based on Linigi Quasa Hashin so but Doiniki Liliana so Aro di Tron Linigi di Tobas got that Nini Banda Hanisha a co even nature di Tun Lini based on Lini Eda like the Haslin the aid base of the nature iniki or base of Basalado are even nature in the Hadil Neko di Banas so Hokona Aro Kashi Night Kito Zashi Aita na stage at this kitchen the Quake and I don't kidding a begin the heat so it Mr. Tuli can honest little
Hakushila Kodoki ya Kodona Idikit hat Niniki Kodon Kitisha ya didn't Agadit ahit so Quakin Kemai ya Kodon Kitchohana that night of Kidiki Habik end the wheat so I don't that ya a cool this better nahotit I don't lay in Gibeshbahasa Anato Nkinat Ani Petato Nil so a dike beta has on orless I don't that the Aben Nachigoki a Kodona ite kitten Leniki a Honehina it didn't kitten lead orless in the late hand so she Yakubach wheat Aniki Alla lei de nebbetrahon de kraton get lahas agon getratnas nel da banaga no kontrati krahen leko. DK a DK the more do the more be yaje DK yankel cheta huit ato DK ben nachiko ke don zagon kikal dot eta ben nachiko ke yakun kitri kren leko. Adon de ta kuige yajda hot bejo hot aniki Shabet or Nito, Quaginal, so stand of energy kunja the has kitten Leniki, a lay hard the Hodlo, a cohort a ya a quick a yati the basic up in sick case hat Neniki, a arjigoki a yakundiki banal sauce and Leniki a yakun, a the husband lead or the Adon the danal sauce and the next hush was segoki a yakunda, and so she a yabeho zenador lately Leniki. Kodonal Sosigi, Ngicheta to think Adon that ADK Kodon Hodina, when he natural kid and lead on it. ADK Kidige Aden, the Idos kitten, the Ayan Hayat and lead on it. Adon that the Yakundiki so Nal Sosigi, but the Dotchi, Toti Digi, Nal Sos, Nal Trashat Ninigi, Ade, Kogi, Nighty Kidigi, but Dotchido. To up on net Zada, a co. Kodon kis weed now yaton kis ya as bad. Do dadel katadel kad. They hosen quit in the quay kodon kis chita hosit and le a condemned laid at the at obet rat neat ahigido betel chita and deep the the night the kidigit adult at the aya quigenad masike. Jo adige apa has eben nachigoki aya quig in haba when no send lead on in the delay the home the Asahasan Tahagidon lay Jetin, the Dadel Katnanan, Higi, so she Hudina, Gona Ordos. Adon the Yakun Diki, Hunt, so she a Yakudo, the East Sound, she a Kujan, the Kraki, the Hachina, the East Sound, the Echo. Diki, Quaki, a Yahudina, go a Yatsidi, Yashan Hanna, DJ, Lido, Les Adon Hanna, Il Teto. Eshanshido Hanel, a young late order, Hanna Kato, Litin Lane, the Anishato, Adon that the Ostra, the Shin Hanna Kato, lit. A digiben of Ingo, a Yatsada, Hunel, or a Kun Han, Dota, Lana Nitzen, a co a Yasana Hana, Sachida, a Yat, what ego a Dutch, hot, only Washington, the Adiki Nash, Nation there. Adon the Quaginan Sanet at the La Asahagi Hort, Enigo, Hajisha, kunde nadgehen dan dårligt då han så da egen nadgeha på hawan hod lo dårligt diki hod ego bechen kitol den la oyo akko eki oyo kedan ni te ani kina huit agot jo hod ego hod han hisse do hod sa digi ye khatzi in la ashi hon nehi hod eko diki ben nachiko ki kunde han so shin ki peshpa hasa anitan ling od kit od ashin tla yan akut ego yan gina beshma hasa anashi wadlo abes od watan der an nishana nisho yan der kot ati kit khadaga handa hon and the chendo the ba shi bike queen send jo hut ego yan handa nishi beshma hasa an do ko de shitejin ligo ekodo ye ai la kodotsa die hatzi sedle digi beshbanza an aji ya ken lemiki kodo ye dach ohona asto sto kwige sto digi bod do bitin de mission leko di kwige na od de nginat ani president light green kwige ya da nes da do hoste beshbanza an ya hije do adon la desh nishito de sto ado bada huint igo sto anabelate sto ko diki ya ba huint juk distinto ba strana khitishnigo ko doni kifchona ako ko eke na alta digi sa digi nasna da tina sosiki ko eke hojish benina ya agatit ahit soto achiko kibena nishite yoseniki kuigi ko eke beslita idne hle tlahosto oba ko no sendo le na okha di tlahon kha chenen khan na kha di kodo ngita na alte don girache na o dan lemigi o ashi anni yet nebzad had ashi pandan and the kunde ta chita huist anigi et ego etesh watinzen bet chohon jos senzen benina ko eken khanansa khanda aden khajena o dan lemigi don khanda khagi sto kodigi hada asidle kuda ya teta de keda honit eniki yakun na khand o da to benki trayana da hot eto le to da eto kodigi yan hen da hot le kut cheri do if adon de ta kodigi yan da bichena da hwe jish kuta she yakun de chash jenin ke na kha je she yakun digi todo shibinyan hit the smazo she akut ego she yape hand so she ben hit khaya hot linde to hut ego ya kun digi la na da nitzen adon data ade hot khali no fleniki do kun ding so da zen da tits aki later morgo so da zen de behada at zen leniki to kun digin kit so da zeniki ya unique تعدين خدصة زين كودنا صوص خدت نهكي تو كودا هيت هيكو دا بدت توتش دو دا بد صد توتزين دون دتا يكون دت صد زين لك جو يجي هيجي جاب خاطر إثناء صوص دا تو كويجي يكو أكين خا كويدوس أثون خا تدوس صهن لينكو بدي ين ليدولت دون دتا يكون ديكي يهنيد نيجي دشين لبتخان سو خن لكو ben nachigo sto ko digin shot jo de yahanano chaki khune hido le kade ho nai so trado digin yanket ta hodlo do le atila ne shike sit ne no thini when so go hate zito